Lovely to see you all. Lovely to see your smiling faces. I've just been getting Joseph's wardrobe ready. If you can see, it's hanging up over there. And 3 of those 4 items were taken from my husband's wardrobe. I'll let you guess which the 3 were. See if he recognises anything. So, what's your favourite board games? Monopoly. Who was Monopoly? Was that you, Kemi? Fantastic. Scrabble? Oh, was that you, Stephen? I've got a Scrabble partner over here. It's Mandy. Perfect. Any other Scrabble players in the room? You used to play it, Michael, right? There's 3 of you then. Go on. Snakes and ladders? But did you have your hand up then? Yeah? And any other board game, yeah? Oh, you're a Scrabbler as well. Articulate? Jeff, you waving? Frustration. Go on, Dave. Oh, chess. Oh, very good. Cluedo trap. Go on, Vicky. What's yours? Game of Life. I've not heard of that one. Jennifer? Mousetrap. Oh, I remember that, Matt. It took ages to set up, didn't it? And then it was all done, wasn't it, when the cage fell? Right. That's brilliant. I am so glad that Monopoly got a mention. But before I go into our preach today, I wanted to share a little story with you, which I have told before, but it's about the very first time that my husband Paul and I came to this church. And it makes me laugh when I tell it, so I'm going to tell it again today. So, we'd come for the first time, and I was like so nervous. You know when you walk into a building that you've not been in before and you don't know where to sit? And afterwards, they had tea and coffee. And we went to sit at some round tables, which were in another room. And this lovely lady had kind of taken us under a wing, and she was chatting away. And Paul sat there, I sat here, this lovely lady was there, chatting away. I've got my coffee, I'm having a drink, chat, chat, chat. But because I'm feeling nervous, I've decided I'm going to put my hand on Paul's knee under the table. So I'm just like patting his knee, and I'm just reassured that he's there. Do you know what I mean? And I'm feeling a little bit better, less anxious. And I look over this lady's shoulder as Paul walks past. Oh, yes. So I froze like mid-pat because I know that Paul is over there and not sat next to me. And really slowly, my head turned because I could feel like this denim knee. So I knew it was a man that was next to me. And I'm looking at the guy who's just led worship. And it was just like, I couldn't believe it. And sometimes I use that as an example because we get ourselves into a scrape without even trying. Do you know that? Wasn't even trying to get into a scrape. But for Joseph, this is part of where he'd got to in his life. And I just wanted to do a little recap to bring us all up to date. So he started off, I'll just get the robe. Da-da! And Joseph, at 17, had this amazing robe that was made for him. And he was set apart from his brothers, like his dad showed a bit of favoritism and made him the robe. Last Friday night, we were in Liverpool for a meal, and Taylor Swift was on in concert, and there were so many Swifties about, you wouldn't believe it. There were like hats and glitz and sequins. It was incredible. And Joseph was a bit of a like Swiftie of his day. But what happened was that he's 17 at this time, and God has spoken to Joseph, and God has said to Joseph, people will bow down to you. And Joseph goes and shares this dream. He shares it with his family. He shares it with his brothers. And to say they're not happy is like an understatement. they're not happy to the extent that what they decide to do one day, they're out working away, the 10 older brothers, and Jacob, the father, sends Joseph, and he's wearing his robe, and he goes out to where they're working, and they spot him. Obviously you would, wouldn't you, with this on? They spot him, and they say, right, this is our opportunity. Let's kill him. Let's do away with him. But one of the brothers, he thinks that's not really a good idea. So they take the robe off him. They put Joseph in a pit. They take the robe, they kill a goat, and they put blood all over the robe, and they take it back to his father Jacob, and they say to Jacob, well, draw your own conclusions, like this is Joseph's robe, we think, and it's all covered in blood, and he's no longer here. So they deceive the father in that they make out that Joseph is dead and killed by a wild animal. Meanwhile, Joseph is in a pit. And in this pit, a group of men travelling past come along, and the brothers sell Joseph to these men, and they take him down to Egypt. Once he gets to Egypt, he is then bought as a slave by another man called Potiphar. And Potiphar, he had a wife who, when Lois preached last week, she referred to her as Mrs. P. I love that. So Mrs. P, right, she's going to be key in what happens next, because the Bible describes Joseph as well-built and handsome. And you know what Mrs. P thought? Mrs. P thought, well, he's well-built and handsome. And she took a little bit of a shine to him, to say the least. And so Mrs. P tried to get Joseph to sleep with her, but he was a man of integrity and honesty, and he didn't want to do that. By this time, Potiphar had given Joseph responsibilities, and sort of by this time, I've missed off the undies. We'll give them a flash. So under his robe, obviously, Joseph had his undies on, and that's what he wore in the pit. I chose the brightest I could to match the robe. But when he gets to Potiphar's house and he works really, really hard, that's when Potiphar recognizes the giftings that are on him, and he gets a kind of a business suit then. He goes up a notch. So this is the suit that comes out when we have a wedding and Paul has to be smart. He can't wear his shorts for it, so he's got his suit on. And Joseph got this new suit. He had a new title, a new job role, because he was trusted. But Mrs. P, she grabbed hold of the jacket and wrenched it off as Joseph ran. And when she got home, we're going to find out what story she told to her husband. We're going to read it, and Farzad is going to come up, and he's going to read it in Farsi for us at the same time as it's coming on screen.
پوتیفار چون سخنان زنش را شنید بسیار خشمگین شد و یوسف را به زندانی که سایر زندانیان پادشاه در آن زندان بودند انداخت. اما در آنجا هم خداوند با یوسف بود و او را برکت می‌داد و وی را مورد لطف زندانیان قرار داد. طولی نکشید که رئیس زندان یوسف را مسئول اداره زندان نمود، به طوری که همه زندانیان زیر نظر او بودند و او برای همه امور نظارت می‌کرد. رئیس زندان در مورد کارهایی که به یوسف سپرده بود نگرانی نداشت، زیرا خداوند با یوسف بود و او را در آنجا کارهایش موفق می‌ساخت.
Thanks, Farzad. How brilliant was that? So, Joseph's now in prison. He didn't deserve to be, but he's now in prison. And, I tried to find a last pair of undergarments, shall we say. I was trying to find some that might have had like arrows on. You know, like when they show cartoon prisoners, they always have arrows on, don't they? But that was the best I could do. So Joseph's in the prison, but it's a sort of repeat story for him because he earns the favour of the prison warden, and the prison warden recognises him as a person who has integrity, who lives and is honest and good and righteous. So he promotes him. There is a verse, and it just describes really what the prison was like, because it was a dark place with no light. And it says in Psalm 105, I think it's going to come on our screen, Joseph was sold as a slave. They bruised his feet with shackles and put his neck in irons till what he foretold came to pass, till the word of the Lord proved him true. The king sent and released him, and the ruler of peoples set him free. So it's that first part of the verse in Psalm 105, and it explains the conditions that Joseph was in. This was not pleasant. This was not good. But because of his character, because of what the prison warden saw in him, he was released from those shackles, from the stocks, and he was given responsibility. And he looked after other prisoners that came into his charge. And there's something like that's really important about that. I think at that point, Joseph had received the dreams that people would bow down to him, that God gave him 10 years earlier. And for 10 years, he'd waited and waited, and those dreams hadn't come true. But he hung in there and he believed. And when he was in the prison, those dreams probably seemed the furthest away. That people would actually bow down to him like God had said, but he hung in there and he believed it, that would come to pass. And sometimes I think for us, God speaks and God says something and God drops something into our heart. And it's one of those moments where we go, really? Really, God, is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying to me? And you hold on to that dream. You hold on to it. And it might not come true for years and years. Throughout Joseph's story, there's a phrase and it keeps saying, sometime past, sometime later. His dream was not immediate. He waited and he waited and he waited, but he never lost hope that would happen. Another verse, it starts in chapter 40 of Genesis, and it starts with the phrase, sometime later. And sometime later, the Pharaoh, who was like the king of the land, he got cross with a couple of his officials. They had the job of being his cupbearer and his chief baker. And he got so angry with them that he threw them into prison. And would you believe it? But it was the prison where Joseph was. That's where they ended up. They called it the king's prison. And there, the cupbearer and the baker are in prison with Joseph. And he's like looking after them. And one night while he's in there, they both have dreams as well. And they are troubled by these dreams that they have. And when Joseph goes to them in the morning, he kind of says to them, like, what's the matter? You know, because he can tell from the face that things are not right. And they say to him, we've had these dreams and we don't know what they mean. And Joseph said, by the power of God, I can tell you what dreams mean. I can interpret it for you. So the cupbearer goes first. And I think we've got these verses on screen, haven't we? Yeah, we're coming up now. So the cupbearer told Joseph his dream. In my dream, there was a vine in front of me with 3 branches on it. It budded, blossomed, and the clusters ripened into grapes. I was holding Pharaoh's cup, and I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup and gave the cup to Pharaoh. And Joseph said, here's the meaning. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will get you out of here and put you back to your old work. You'll be giving Pharaoh his cup just as you used to. So that's a pretty good interpretation of the dream, isn't it? In 3 days. And the chief baker, he was listening in on all of this, and he thought, that's pretty good. I had a dream as well. I'll share my dream. And so he tells Joseph about his dream, and on his head there's 3 baskets. And in the baskets, there's all kinds of bread. There's like croissants and Danish pastry. Oh, there's everything up there because he's the baker. They're all in the baskets on his head. And he said, and then the birds of the air flew by and they picked out from the top basket. And Joseph looks at him and he says, those 3 baskets, they represent 3 days. And in 3 days' time, Pharaoh will lift your head off and hang you on a tree. Whoa, I'm not sure he's glad he asked after all of that. But in all of that, when Joseph was talking to the cupbearer, and he said these words, after he told him his dream, because he knew he was going to be released, he said to him, remember me when all is well with you again, and show me kindness and mention me to Pharaoh. In that verse, if we go back to that one, thanks. Remember me and mention me. Joseph is pleading, isn't he? Joseph is pleading and he's just saying, like, remember me, mention me. When you get out of here, tell Pharaoh about me here. And this is going to be one of those moments where some time again passes. Because after the baker had his dream and Joseph told him what it meant, sure enough, 3 days later, it was Pharaoh's birthday, and he had a party and he brought in all these officials, and he brought in the cupbearer and he brought in the chief baker, and the cupbearer was restored to the job he did before, but the baker, his head went off and he hung him up. And then this is the end, the final verse of the chapter, and it just says this. It's I've lost my place. It's the final verse, I think it's verse 23, but that's the one. It says, the chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. So when everything was right in the chief cupbearer's life again, he forgot Joseph. He forgot about the man who interpreted his dreams. He completely forgot about him. We heard before, Joseph said, remember me, mention me. But I feel like this verse is a gutter because it just emphasizes twice, doesn't it? The cupbearer did not remember. He forgot him. So Joseph is left in this prison. And approximately he's 28 now, and he's had like 11 years of either being in slavery or being in prison. But chapter 41 of Genesis and verse 1, it starts after 2 more full years. So there's another 2 years for Joseph after what he's already gone through. There's another 2 years for him. But within that chapter, very soon, there's a quickly moment. And you know, when Monopoly was chosen, that's so good because there's a get out of jail free card in there, isn't there? And Joseph was about to get his Monopoly moment. But that's Lois's preach next week, so I can't go there. So I just wanted it, in summing up for today, just to mention a couple of things. God doesn't make mistakes about where he places you. He placed Joseph in that prison because God knows future, and he knows the cupbearer and the chief baker are going to be coming in. He had Joseph in the right position. So in life, if you just feel like God's lost the handle on where I am, he hasn't. He's not lost the handle. He knows exactly where you are. He knows the dreams he's given you. He knows the time scale, and he knows who is coming into your life and where you need to be to meet those people. I wanted to kind of finish, it's with a bit of a personal story from our family. So this is our lovely granddaughter, Chloe. Is she up there? Oh, yeah. With her granddad, who she adores. Not that I'm bitter. Anyway, just part of her story. She's now 6. She'll be 7 next month. So my daughter, Kate, and her husband, Rod, about 8 years ago, decided they would want to adopt. And Kate is a real dreamer. She dreams loads. But one night, just before she was going to sleep, so she was awake, and she got a really vivid picture from God of a child with Down syndrome. And she knew that God wanted them to adopt a little one with Down syndrome. And Kate and her husband Rod, they were really felt that this would be a little girl. And so, in faith, they painted what would be the nursery. One of the walls, they painted it glitter pink. So we're back to the Swifties again, aren't we now? So it's glitter pink, this wall. So at this time, they've not even gone through the process. There's nothing, there's no children kind of on the horizon. But in faith, they are believing for this little one with Down syndrome. They were fortunate enough to get a Christian social worker. I say fortunate because if you have a social worker and you say to them, well, God's given me a dream that I'm going to adopt a little girl with Down syndrome, that might not be computing very well. And as they started their journey, on this adoption journey, children came up for adoption, but they were not a little girl with Down syndrome. There was a little boy with Down syndrome. And at that point, they thought, is this it, God? Did we hear you right in the first place? But then they just felt that we shouldn't mould our dream to make it fit the current circumstances. So if God has given you a dream and you're in a certain circumstance at the moment, don't try and mould your circumstances to try and make it be the dream that God's given you, because it's in the timing. It's in the timing of it all. There's this quote that I came across. We'll shift our Chloe off for a minute now. And it says, don't doubt in the dark what God told you in the light. In those light moments, when he speaks, cling on to it. Because when the dark times come, the darkness of the prison for Joseph, the times of waiting, hang on in there because he's going to speak. Never doubt in the dark what he told you in the light. For Kate and Rod, time moved on, and the social workers had to more press that they would consider other children, and they just kept saying, no, it's not right, it's not the right time, it's not the right one. And then eventually one day, the phone rang, and this little girl had been born with Down syndrome. And they just knew, this is it, this is her, she's arrived. So she was premature and had to stay in hospital several weeks. And there was a time from her being born until Kate and Rod got to meet her, maybe 10 days, something like that. I'm doing this from memory. But in the meantime, I found out about this amazing job that the NHS have. And this job is a cuddler, okay? So for little ones who have no parent to hold them, someone comes in, a cuddler, an NHS cuddler, and they take the child and they hold it and they rock it and they sing over it and they speak to it and they touch it ever so gently, so they've got the human contact and the warmth. And as I was preparing this, I kind of felt that God is like that cuddler with your dream. He's got it. He's holding it. He's looking at it. He's in his arms. The dream has been conceived, but yet to be given birth. And when the time is right, he hands it on to you. It's all about his timing. For Joseph, he waited years and years for the cupbearer, he waited 3 days. So don't be distracted from other people's dreams and how quickly they're fulfilled. Know that God has got his eye on you. He knows what he's promised you, and he is holding it in his arms, ready for that moment when you're ready and when the time is right for him to pass it on. Would you stand with me now while we read this last verse together? And if the band had come, that would be amazing. Because waiting is really hard, isn't it? Waiting when you see other people receiving their dream, that is difficult. And when you start to doubt, God, did you really speak to me? God, did you really say those things? He did. Don't doubt in the dark what he told you in the light. And I want to pray for you this morning, particularly for those who are waiting on God. And Isaiah 40, verse 31, says that those who wait on God get fresh strength. Get fresh strength. They spread their wings and soar like eagles. They'll run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint.